Welcome to this Times Techies webinar with NASSCOM, the Technology Industry Association. My name is Sujit John, and I have with me my colleague Shilpa Fadnis. We are technology and business reporters at TOI, and both of us have been with TOI a long time. The two of us will moderate this discussion. Many would call 2020 a lost year. Yet, if we had to identify positives within that disastrous year, one of the biggest would be what it has done for India's technology industry. Suddenly, the world realized technology could help deal with the pandemic disruptions in ways that they had not imagined. Suddenly, one of the most popular terms is digital transformation. Many have recognized that digital organizations can weather storms better. They are more resilient. They have recognized that new age digital technologies enable seamless work from anywhere. They can provide amazing insights into customers and business operations. All that is great news for India's technology industry, and it is showing in the performances of these companies. But such is the speed at which changes are happening that the Indian technology industry itself has to reinvent for the new normal, be able to cater to the rapidly emerging new needs. To discuss this, we have with us a very distinguished panel. We have with us Rishad Premji. We hardly need to tell you who Rishad is. So Rishad is the chairman of Wipro. He was until recently the chief strategy officer of Wipro, responsible for shaping Wipro's strategy to drive sustained and profitable growth. Rishad was also responsible for investor relations and government relations activities for the company. He's on the board of the foundation in his father's name, the Premji Foundation, one of the largest not-for-profit initiatives in India. In 2018-19, Rishad was the chairman of NASSCOM. Welcome, Rishad.
Thank you.
We have with us Debjani Ghosh. Debjani is the president of NASSCOM, the National Association of Software and Services Companies. She has been in that role since April 2018. NASSCOM has over 2,800 Indian and multinational member companies. As president of NASSCOM, Debjani is responsible for establishing new growth areas for the technology industry in India. Prior to NASSCOM, Debjani was with Intel for over 10 years in different roles, the last of which was as MD of India. Debjani was the first woman to lead Intel India. Welcome, Debjani. We have with us Keshav Murugesh. Keshav is the group CEO of WNS Global Services. He has been on this platform before. He has been with WNS for over 10 years now. It's a company with over 43,000 people across 16 countries. He's the past chairman of NASSCOM. He also chairs the NASSCOM BPM Council for 2 consecutive terms. Prior to joining WNS, Keshav was CEO of Sintel. Welcome, Keshav.
Thank you.
And we have with us Srikanth Velamakanni. Srikanth is a co-founder, group chief executive, and executive vice chairman of Fractal, one of the leading players in artificial intelligence and digital transformation. Since Srikanth co-founded Fractal in 2000, the company has raised more than 300 million from private equity investors and has empowered more than 100 Fortune 500 companies with its AI, data, and analytics-driven business strategies. Under his leadership, Fractal has developed several product lines within the company, including Cuddle.ai, Debjani.ai, and Cure.ai. Prior to co-founding Fractal, Srikanth was an investment banker. By the way, Srikanth, I didn't know Cure.ai was a spin-off of Fractal. Amazing. I hear a lot of things suddenly about Cure.ai and some fresh funding and all of that. Welcome, Srikanth. Those who are viewing this can send in questions through the Facebook comment box. Shilpa and I will put them to the panelists. Let me start with you, Rishad. IT companies had a great third quarter. Revenue picked up dramatically. Some of you are talking of double-digit growth in the next financial year. We carried a report today that IT sector hiring grew the fastest in January compared to all other sectors. We had Keshav on our program some time ago, and he said the future post-COVID looks very exciting based on the way India stepped up and managed this crisis for global clients. Practically everyone is saying enterprises have recognized the value of digital transformation. So my question is, are we on the threshold of another golden age for information technology? Rishad?
Sujit, I don't know. It's certainly a good time for technology, and it's interesting to observe if you think about how hard the fall was for the industry overall in quarter one. The bounce back in quarter two and quarter three has been as good and robust as the fall was perhaps. And I think the reason for that is quite straightforward, which is the reality is everybody in this distributed sort of remote way of working is had to rely on technology to connect with all stakeholders. Technology has now become the medium of communication, whether it's with your customers, your suppliers, your partners. And so that bodes well for technology services companies, technology product companies, BPO companies, etc. Right? I think a couple of things have profoundly changed or profoundly accelerated in the last 10, 12 months, which I think helps the industry overall, right? One is the fact that we're all working in this distributed medium has significantly changed the relevance of collaborative technologies. Customers are using collaborative technologies very differently. And more as I talk to customers, they're now thinking more impactfully about the effectiveness of these technologies. How do they measure that? How do they drive that? How do they enhance it? How do they improve it, etc.? So it's profoundly changed how customers are using it. And so the deployment of collaborative technologies has also changed very dramatically. Cloud has become an accelerated reality. The flexibility, the scalability, the speed of which it allows customers to engage and transact has dramatically changed, which again bodes very well for technology services companies, for technology overall, as customers are deploying cloud more and more. And then there are, I think, a couple of fundamental changes in which the nature of the industry is also changing, which has also just gotten accelerated, Sujit. So the new model of exchange and engagement with the customer is about experience transformation, right? So it's about customer-centric, human-centric, experience-led change that the customers are driving profoundly. The new model of engagement with the customer is all about operations transformation. How do you very fundamentally change the core? How do you revive the core of your organization, right? So if I'm a retailer, how do I profoundly think about my warehouse value stream, and how do I think about warehouse in a very different manner than I thought about it in the past? And then the new model of exchange is also about how do you think about leveraging new age technologies for new age offerings to customers? How do you drive fan engagement better? How do you drive hyper personalization more dramatically with customers? And those kinds of things. And then fundamentally, business models have changed. Today, if I'm a restaurant, my storefront has become an app in many parts of the world as opposed to the actual storefront of the restaurant, right? If I'm a retailer, contactless retail or curbside pickup have become very, very important. So with all these changes that are being driven, technology is becoming front and center and a really, really critical role that it's playing, which just bodes well for us as an industry.
Okay. Debjani, what is your sense? Are we on the threshold of another big jump in technology?
Um, Sujit, if you look at what happened last year, the last 10 to 12 months, I think there was a fundamental shift in how we think about technology. That to me, the biggest change was a fundamental mindset shift with respect to how we think about technology. I mean, during the lockdown, technology became the lifeline to survival, whether as for individuals or for businesses, right? Till then, we all knew technology was important, but we hadn't realized that without it, we cannot live, we cannot work, we cannot learn. I think that realization really hit home when the lockdowns got announced globally. And now, what is exciting is technology, I think, across countries, or the industry, the tech industry, holds the key to economic recovery. And that is a huge focus point from a government and everyone perspective, because if you look at this industry, this is one industry that adapted to all the changes extremely quickly. Extremely. We didn't wait a day. We didn't absolutely wait a day. Uh, Even before the lockdown got announced, we had some sense it was coming. We had started work with the government to say, let's make remote working a reality in India. Uh, the moment the lockdowns got announced, we got the laws changed, we got the policy changed. Everybody worked round the clock to move people, move assets. I mean, within, I would say, weeks, and when I say weeks, maybe it was 10 days, we had moved around 99% of people and assets home. And it's a 4 million plus industry, right? I think the way this industry has demonstrated resilience, agility, and the ability to adapt has been acknowledged globally. I mean, we've got analysts, we've got customers all coming in and saying, we did not expect this to happen in India. And I think this just adds to the credibility of this industry. And the reason I'm hopeful, Sujit, is because going into this hyper digital world that we are rapidly entering, I strongly believe that trust is going to be the most important currency of this hyper digital world. People are going to decide whether they want to work with you or not based on how much they trust you and your ability to handle the next crisis and keep their businesses running. I think we as an industry have shown that we are trustworthy. We're absolutely trustworthy. And that is what gives me hope. And I will also say that I'm very proud of the work that NASSCOM has done to enable this the adaptation, the transformation to remote work that this industry went through, and also build that narrative um, of the Indian IT industry as one of the most trustworthy partners for your digital transformation. And that is what really gives me hope.
Debjani, if I may come in here, if you can share your thoughts on how government played catalyst, in navigating the new normal.
They were our partners in crime. None of this would have been possible without the support. And I really mean that because of certain laws and regulations in India, uh, it wasn't possible for us, a large part of this industry, the OSPs, to work from home. So when we even got a sense, when we realized how serious COVID is, we realized that it'll be impossible for us to keep such large campuses open and running. We started working with the government to say we have to change laws. Now, you know how difficult it is in India to change regulation or law, and that too overnight. But we got this done. And we could not have got it done if the government had not been willing to play. They were with us every step of the way. What is needed? What has to be done? There was that. I have never seen this kind of a commitment to say, let's get things done so that you guys can keep your businesses running. And it was a true partnership. And I just hope the partnership continues. There's so much more to be done.
Thanks, Debjani. Keshav, coming to you, you said the post-COVID future is very exciting based on the way India has stepped up and managed the crisis for global clients. What did you do to be able to manage the crisis so well? What are some of the newer initiatives you need to take and sustain this performance consistently?
Yeah, Shilpa. So first and foremost, the BPM industry is much more of a boring industry. First, let me start with that. We run the operations of global companies, and therefore we are people who actually run the back end and not really create the apps or create the platforms. But the platforms created by every company, ultimately we work on and deliver the kind of outcomes that end customers really want. So that's where we are. So if you look at how Indian BPM progressed over the past 2 decades or so, in a very disciplined fashion, we moved from what I call BPM 1.0 to potentially BPM 3.0, from cost to value beyond cost. And then, thereafter, much more focused on domain, process, technology excellence, stuff like that. But with COVID, overnight, we had to bring the future ahead, right? And I would say that we were rushed into what I call as now the BPM 4.0 model, because one is we had to, think on our feet. We had to work with NASSCOM, with the government, and with clients. Because remember, when the change took place, clients were not prepared for this at all. And there was no choice of Indian BPM going out and saying, we can't service you because of this crisis. We had to keep the lights on and keep running. So the first thing I will say is that the transformation agenda, has taken off with a sense of urgency never seen before. Every client within the industry actually worked closely with the industry players to co-create the solutions so that, as Debjani said, we could take those laptops, desktops, and the people, back home, work from there. We work closely with them in terms of creating the right cyber security solutions that could monitor, and including proctoring solutions that could monitor how our people were actually working, from homes. We worked on very interesting new dashboards that could give comfort to clients as well as even to ourselves, that then the risks were being planned for very carefully. And as Debjani said, we kept the lights on without missing a beat. And I think that has built so much of currency for the Indian industry. So first and foremost, I will say that we are here to deliver certainty. We deliver exceedingly well, right? We built trust with every one of our clients. The naysayers who had not yet accepted this model are all now clamoring to get onto this model, because they say before the next pandemic hits us, I must be a part of this model, right? The other very interesting thing is all the key things that we've been talking about, whether it is cloud, whether it is cybersecurity, whether it is customer experience, collaborative tools, all these have been put to the test at a very, very great intensity. And very interestingly, because of the outcomes we have now delivered for clients, and the fact that every existing client and a lot of prospects want to now jump on the bandwagon, the most qualified and interesting employees from our point of view want to become a part of this industry now, right? And therefore, I will say that the transformation agenda for Indian BPM has now begun. I would say that's Indian BPM 4.0, so to speak. And I actually believe that the potential for growth from here is very, very solid.
So good to hear that. I remember you saying that last time as well. And some of you are sitting at home and signing multiple $100 million deals and all that. Amazing that even cutting edge talent wants to join this industry. Srikanth, let me bring you in here. AI is the big buzzword today. At least one of the big ones. Cloud is suddenly, I'm hearing everybody suddenly talk cloud. But let me talk to you about AI. You got into analytics early. Give us a sense of how good India is in delivering these services, and what should India do to further build on these capabilities?
Right. Thank you, Sujit. At the very beginning, what I will say is that of all the things that Keshav mentioned, Rishad mentioned, and Debjani mentioned, underlying all of these phenomena like collaboration, if you look at cloud, cybersecurity, or customer experience, or digital transformation that you mentioned, underlying all of this, there's one common factor, that it's an alphabet soup of technology buzzwords, right? We keep hearing them, blockchain, everything. But underlying all of that is essentially the idea of running a smarter business, and a smarter business that can actually incorporate everything that's going on, make sense of what's going on, and make the right decisions, right? It's about driving from data to building, making decisions, and really changing lives, improving customer experience. All the outcomes are essentially because we are a smarter, more responsive business, right? That requires a ability to manage the data and build algorithms on data and really predict the future, all of that, right? And many of these so-called, it's a very dangerous, risky, or boring jobs, many of them underlying that is, if you can bring in smarter AI, you can actually augment and make it far more interesting so that humans can do what they do best, right? So therefore, AI is really at the heart of a lot of the technological transformation and the next wave of technology that Sujit, you were referring to. That's really what AI is powering. And I will take AI and call it a very broad word, right? AI is artificial intelligence. So anything, even a cooking recipe can be potentially called AI. Essentially, it's any sequence of steps that a machine can do as well as humans, right? And when machines become slightly better at doing that, when they start to match and exceed human capability, that's when it becomes really interesting and it starts to augment or even replace human beings, right? And here's where so much has happened in the last 10 years. Back when I started, doing Fractal, it was a winter of AI. And there was no talent. And if we had to speak about neural networks, it would be like it's a black box, don't even talk about it, and so on. From those days, in the last 10 years, we're seeing a plethora of research getting produced, lots and lots of research. Many countries are leading that. By the way, India is doing pretty well on that subject. I mean, to your question, right? India is number 3 on the total amount of research papers published in AI, which isn't a mean feat at all. And if you look at the global Indian diaspora, my guess is that, and it's just an educated guess, is that 1 in 3 people in the AI field is an Indian. It's that big. And India has that brilliant talent India produces one of the most mathematically gifted talent anywhere in the world. We have numbers and we have quality, right? So we have the supply to cater to the world's demand. And the other good news is that in the next 10 years, by 2030, India would have contributed 91 new employees or 91 million people to the workforce. China would have lost 65 million because of aging, right? They're going beyond the working age. So India is a net supplier of talent to the world. And if we get the education system in our country right and skill them, as NASSCOM is doing with Future Skills Prime, etc., different initiatives, if we can train our people to address this hot new area of AI and really pivot this 91 million people towards solving global problems, we have a very, very good future. India already has brilliant talent. And as you can see, much of the research that's getting produced around the world has some India component embedded in it already. But can you take that, pivot it towards Indian uses? Can you pivot it to Indian startups gaining ground? That's where really a whole host of deep tech companies have come in. These deep tech companies are, I am wowed by them, right? Some of these are 3 years old, 2 years old. They have no baggage of the sort of industrial era upbringing that some of us have here. They're bold. They want to change the world. They are completely fearless about the problem they're attacking. They're getting the data and they're raising funding. The capital is now becoming available to them. And suddenly you're seeing these massive scaled companies in India. This is something we only used to hear about the US and lately about China, but you're starting to see in India. So I feel that India, from a talent standpoint, just from boldness of the entrepreneur standpoint, and even the scale of the data available in India standpoint, we are in a beautiful situation. Next 10 to 15 years are going to be the golden age for entrepreneurship, education, and AI for India. And it's largely because of the demographic dividend we have, like of the people that we are, young people that we are sort of bringing up, and the fact that we've had this traditional success in the areas of mathematics and information technology, which will all come in very handy.
Since you're talking about the talent, let me ask you, what would be advice for youngsters who want to be in this space? Are there online courses and things that they can also look at in case the education system is not good enough?
Yes, look, the underlying all of this is mathematics, right? People have to really get comfortable with math. And if I would not advise somebody to be in the world of AI to write code. There are multiple roles within AI. So if you're not really wanting to write code in AI, maybe you can be associated with AI. But if you really want to write code in AI, I think you need to be comfortable with math. And that's one thing. So that's one judge or one metric to whether to do it or not do it. That's for sure. Second thing is that there is now extraordinarily high quality content available. What we need is a little bit of nudge, direction, mentorship, which is still not very easy, right? Because with so much available, you'll also soon realize that you don't know where to start and you're getting stuck in some places. You need some help. A little bit of guidance here and there. The content is already there. They can start to progress, right? So I would say that anybody in the technology industry, broadly technology industry, with a strong mathematical talent, can, if they decide to take this on, they can actually learn and start to contribute. Because I see the future of the tech industry and the AI industry, BPM industry, they're all converging. We need these smart people, we want them everywhere, right? So if one of the people that work for this industry start to learn these techniques, I think we will see that the future that we just spoke about.
Okay. We did some stories recently.
In fact, Sujit, if I can may I just add to what Srikanth said? So, since Shilpa was also asking about government role, I think one of the areas where the government has really partnered very strongly with us is in the development of this digital skilling agenda. So, MITI has come together with NASSCOM, and we have jointly created this Future Skills Prime initiative, which is online. Well, it's actually a hybrid skilling model, largely online today because of the pandemic, but going forward, it'll become a hybrid digital skilling model that we hope to get at least 4 million Indians skilled on these digital skills over the next few years.
It's already
Not
started.
Just within, sorry?
It's already started. You already have the program
already going? Started. In fact, I was just going to share a few numbers with you. So we kicked this off, I think, a month or 2 months back. I forget exact date, but roughly a month or 2 months back, we kicked it off. And as of end Jan, we already had around 60,000 people registered and taking the skilling trainings. After you complete a training, you get a fluency badge. And I was thrilled to see around 9,000 fluency badges that have already been given out. So, that's a very high percentage of people who are completing the courses, which gives me a lot of hope. And this is just early days. This is just a few months of launch. And we are now getting states like Rajasthan has come forward, Telangana have come forward, that are taking this platform and driving it en masse, through universities, industry, etc., to get people skilled. So we are looking at skilling people in the IT industry, and NASSCOM also has a separate initiative, Future Skills, the old Future Skills, which works with companies to do that. And Future Skills Prime, which is the government and NASSCOM initiative, is looking at people who are not in the traditional IT industry, who are in analog industries like manufacturing, retail, health, but need to understand these technologies, and also students. So our hope is with these two initiatives, we will create tremendous momentum in mass. And honestly, just like in the early days when people were getting excited about startups, Israel came out and said, we are the startup nation. And, that has stuck. I think this is India's moment to go out there and say, we are the talent nation, because talent is going to rewrite the rules of competition in the future. Not just in the future, but it's already begun to rewrite the rules of competition. So it's a huge opportunity that we have ahead of us.
Talent nation. Rishad, give us an idea. I mean, you have massive organizations, 2 lakh employees, 3 lakh employees, 4 lakh employees. I mean, at one level, it's fascinating that you are able to move so fast, even with being such big organizations. Give us an idea. How are you changing your organizational culture, employee engagement programs, and all that to make these kind of rapid changes?
You have no choice, Sujit. So, I think what Debjani talked about, talent is the lifeline of organizations like us. And so if we don't upskill and upgrade our talent, and if they don't upgrade and upskill themselves, they're going to get left behind. So participating on scale, both in terms of programs that we drive internally inside the organization, but also partnering with things like Future Skills is incredibly, incredibly important. Tomorrow, if you have 1,000 data scientists, you have 1,000 data scientists somebody else doesn't have. If you have 1,000 cybersecurity experts, if you have 1,000 cloud experts, if you have 1,000 machine learning experts. So the scarcity of skills creates value in them. And so upskilling people, creating pools of talent that are qualified in these new areas is incredibly important. The other thing that I love is, the fact that this new ways of working, the future of work, which is changing a little bit into this hybrid model. And I have differing views on the model, because I like the model to a certain extent, but I think it has limitations. Like this engagement at the moment has limitations, is that it's more transactional than if we were in person. But the power of the model in moving to a hybrid model is it's more inclusive. So it also allows you to access a whole different talent base that was perhaps getting left behind. You are now able to access people in tier 2, tier 3 cities, which you were not able to access because they didn't want to move to tier 1 cities, but you can now reach them, skill them, leverage them. You can access women. Many of us as organizations start at 50%. We end up in our mid 30s overall in the company. We end up, at least we are embarrassed at the level of women we have in our leadership talent, but you can now include them because they can also have opportunities to work from home, especially as they start families. So the talent base increases, and then pushing talent to them is a requirement not only of the company, but also of the individual. So it's not only becoming a push-based system, it's also becoming a pull-based system. So I'm very, very excited, and there's no way to compete in a services business without focusing, number one, on your talent.
So you would say build a good hybrid model, something that'll...
No, we will build a hybrid model. So we will have a model which will work partially from home, partially, but we will not move to a model where somebody is working 4 days a week from home. I'm a huge believer that it's important for people to get together for 2 reasons. One is for culture, right? Organizations grow and breed and learn when people get together, when there's office cooler, water cooler gossip and coffee gossip, and just the downtime, and when people get to learn and know the organization. And so it is a challenge, when 10,000, 15,000 people leave you every year and another 30,000 people are joining you, you have a net change of a lot of people and they've never engaged with other human beings in person. And that's not good in my view. So connect with people is incredibly important for organizations. And so I'm very keen people come back for that. And the other reason I'm very keen people come back is for innovation, because I find innovation doesn't flow in a linear manner. It oftentimes flows in a very unstructured form. Oftentimes, if you're sitting together in a conference room and frustrated and suddenly something may strike because you decide to go for lunch together just because you're sitting there. Whereas if you're engaging in this medium, if we were done, we'd be done. We'd all close this medium and go back into our regular life and not be sitting in the same conference room. So for those two reasons, at least, I'm a huge fan of people getting together. I'm keen we come back together, but we want to leverage this new way of working because it has its advantages as well. So how do we strike the right balance to come up with the right hybrid model?
No, true. I stay so far away from the office that I love working from home. But then I think I completely agree with you, Rishad. Yeah, I mean, you miss out on some of those things that are so important. Shilpa?
Keshav, coming to you, many of the changes that we've seen in technology are structural. They're here to stay. But I don't think we're going to go back to the old ways of working. It's going to be collaborative spaces, huddle rooms, and going for a hybrid model. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts from the BPM industry. What is it that you're seeing from a talent landscape standpoint?
Yeah, so Shilpa, it's an interesting question. And if you look at, how at least I look at the business, I actually think that for different companies and for different industries, this model will evolve in different ways in terms of, the hybrid work, workplace, so to speak. Because I'm hearing from a lot of 24 and 25-year-old startup kind of employees that, they're supposed to be working for companies in the Valley today, but they've all left. And they're now in Romania, they're in Bombay, they're here, there, and their founders have actually said, what, this is working well for us. We pay the same salary, work from wherever you are, and we're going to change our model itself to that model. So it works for some of them. I just saw half an hour ago, just before we started this meeting, Salesforce announced that the 9 to 5 kind of workplace is now dead. Now, we'll have to understand what that means from their perspective. But I think from our perspective, and I would say generally from the BPM perspective, I would agree predominantly with what Rishad said, because I think the best thing that Debjani and NASSCOM did with the government was to enable this long-term work from home kind of a model and get all the relaxations, which means it allows us to access in the long term fantastic employees. It will enable the what I call the gig economy. It will bring in women employees and people who are wanting to work part-time, particularly women employees who've not been able to access, or we've not been able to access at least, because they want to work 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day. So that I think we will use the work from home model much more to access talent like this, as well as in the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 locations. But generally, because of the nature of services, at least we do, and I think a lot of the industry does, we will want the bulk of the people to come back to the office, essentially to make sure that first and foremost risks are under control, both operational and cyber risk. Because remember, though we have not faced any issue in the last 11 or 12 months, we handle some of the most sensitive data and the most sensitive transactions for industries across the globe, right? And therefore, to be able to bring all of that back and invest even more based on the learnings is important. The culture aspect is very, very important. All of us run, innovation programs. We need that to happen. So I would say that we will want to have a blended model where the bulk will be back in the offices, but the office of the future will change, right? I think a lot of the old infrastructure will change for new infrastructure where we can actually plan for the next pandemic, because some of us also had shocks. Though we did well, we also had shocks with old infrastructure and old practices. That is one. The second thing is, I think the most important thing I would like to say is, I think the BPM industry is sending out a strong signal to talent that this is now a very interesting place for them to engage themselves in for the long term. Look at the whole IT BPM industry during this crisis. We went from maybe arguably 8% of GDP to almost 10% of GDP during this crisis, right? That's a very interesting story to tell the world and any candidate. The kind of technologies that were unleashed, even to clients who earlier were not willing to really step up, has been amazing. So everyone has now understood that we are capable of doing it. We have forced clients to completely transform their offerings programs in the marketplace. I think the way clients are now interacting with their end clients using new models developed by the IT companies and us, right, and serviced by us, is game changing, I would say. And I will say that overall, the best thing that has happened is the world has understood the power of interacting with our model and also with an agency called NASSCOM, because they saw the way NASSCOM stepped up, the way NASSCOM actually brought the government in. Come on, where have you seen the Prime Minister of a country act as your brand manager? He actually tweeted at that point in time that this is a very important industry and we will make sure it is supported. I can tell you at least, the bulk of our clients were just amazed with that one tweet that went out. Again, and therefore they understood that this is probably the only industry body in the world of its nature and its kind, and it's smart business for them to take leverage, therefore, of India and the tech model. So I actually think that lots of positives emerging from all of this. And as you can see, I'm very positive about the future.
Mm-hmm. So good to hear that. Srikanth, your segment of business, I mean, is that also reinventing in some sense for this new normal?
Yes, we are the disruptors, Sujit. We are the ones who are disrupting everything that's going on. And even the ones who are disrupting, look, we still have to, this rate of change in our industry is so vast, right? I mean, half-life of knowledge used to be 3 years, maybe it's even less now. In that sense, we can never sit comfortably thinking that we know what is going on. We just have to continuously update. And that's the crop of people that are coming up. We are really enabling, and India has to enable a future learners who know how to learn, because everybody will go through multiple careers, maybe 4 or 5 careers in their lifetime. So can they really develop the ability to learn multiple things and develop what I call as a pie-shaped career track, right? You need breadth, certainly, but you need depth in at least 2 fields now. It used to be a T-shaped career track a few years ago, depth and breadth in one area. But now, given how fast things are moving, you may need a pie and some, right? So that's the kind. So as Fractal and generally in the deep tech world, people have to be comfortable with the disruption, have to be comfortable with the fact that whatever they did 2-3 years ago will be totally reinvented and upended by somebody new who's coming in. So therefore, can you really disrupt yourself before somebody else disrupts you? So that's really the mindset that I think we have to bring. And I think that's something that's useful for the country as well, as we try to upgrade our country from what I would call as a generally not very innovative in the way we are doing research, right? For example, India spends 0.65% of its GDP on R&D. US is 3%, right? And even if you look at somebody like China, they've gone from 1.4% to 2.2% in a matter of 10 years. So they've really increased their R&D spends by 50% or more, right? So that's really how much other countries are doing. And as India, if we continue to stay where we are, it's going to be difficult. So how do we create that disruptive innovation? How do we create that entrepreneurial mindset? Because I see the longer term, it's education and entrepreneurship. That's what really saves India, right? We have brilliant workforce. If they can be educated the way we want them to be, I think, and they can learn new things every day. And if many of them take risks and start business and create these deeply tech businesses, because future of all businesses tech. I mean, we know that. All business, it's health is health tech, and insurance is insure tech, and financial services is fintech, and everything is food tech. That's really the future. So if you have these really bright people get into tech and really, and also take risks and build these tech companies, future is really, really bright for India.
Since you mentioned this talent part, I just wanted, this is a very interesting question. And I said there are a lot of students who will watch this. And I would like Rishad and Srikanth to probably pitch into this. So Shruti Zatakia, how would the industry's expectations change from fresh grads in the new normal? Will it expect us to come with skill sets like AI, ML right out of college? Or will these be taught on the job as it happens currently?
You want to go ahead, Srikanth?
Yeah, sure. So look, I think what we need is, generally speaking, the technology industry has done a fantastic job over the last 25, 30 years, is to take raw talent and prepare them for the industry and prepare them for the work, right? So that's, every big tech company has built very nice infrastructure to train people and orient them to business. So I think that will continue to happen. And everybody is doubling down on their own learning and training initiatives so that they can prepare the workforce. Having said that, even kids are now learning of design thinking. You know, my daughter at 8 years old will start learning design thinking in a couple of years in her school. I know that because people who are a couple of grades senior to her are already learning that. So they're learning design thinking, and many of them are coding, right or wrong. Many of them are starting to code very early on in their lives, and most of them who will graduate in the next 5 to 10 years will be very comfortable with processing data, getting insights, and building some basic mathematical models, and learning some of these mathematical underpinnings around AI and machine learning and so on. So it will be very useful for people to learn it. And if they haven't learned in their school and college, there are lots of courses available all over. And what we have seen is also a rise in these certification type of courses, which bridge you from where you are to be ready for employment. Those are also picking up a lot of pace across the country. So I think I would suggest that either pick up those fundamentals on your own, learn from the world, or even pick up any of these courses. I think that's what really will set you up for the future.
You know, Sujit, when I was graduating from college, I went to a liberal arts school and I was looking at investment banking jobs, and the investment bankers were looking to hire philosophy majors. Because the reason they believed is, they wanted people who could think. They could teach you the job on the job, especially when you graduate at 21, 22. So I'm a big believer in that philosophy. So certainly I agree with Srikanth. I think learnability on specific technologies, our children are much more tech educated, just moving further down the value chain. So in school today, you're learning much more. There's much more access and availability of how you can learn specific things than when we were graduating from college. But I think so I would not worry too much if I was a young student that do I have a particular skill or I don't, because technology is changing so dramatically as well. So what is relevant today may not be relevant 3 years from now. So I think the ability to learn, so learnability and the ability to adapt and be agile and change is going to be very, very critical. So I think that would be a skill that's incredibly important to have, the ability to pivot as things pivot, as opposed to getting hung up to what you've learned and then not being able to change as things change. I think that is incredibly important, to have that mindset of being incredibly, incredibly flexible and agile, and the ability to learn. Certainly you should leverage what you can learn, what is relevant if you're in college and coming into a job. Absolutely, you must leverage that, but things may change 4 or 5 years down the road.
So Sujit, may I add something there?
Yeah, please.
So I think, both the panelists made some excellent points. I just want to add that, since a student has asked this question, I think it's also very important that while they, understand the basics of technology and they want to specialize in some particular area of technology and stuff like that, investing in soft skills, making sure that they're smartening themselves, making sure that they're building commercial acumen, making sure that, business smarts generally are also being focused on, that, they can make a 3-minute presentation, an elevator pitch with you. These are very important things that we also look for. Let me tell you, that beyond a certain stage, I mean, when you come into a company, I guess the focus is all about what was your first degree and stuff like that. But thereafter, career progression completely takes place based on the business outcomes you are delivering. And more importantly, how you are seen as being part of that team. And if you're outstanding at technology and stuff like that, and lousy at, playing cricket or talking about cricket or hockey or football or whatever the game is, or not being able to have a meaningful conversation on something, you will be ejected very quickly. I can tell you that. I don't want to sound harsh, but I've seen it, across my entire career, across different kinds of businesses. So I will say that the soft skills must be focused on a lot. And that's another area where I think NASSCOM is delivering through the Future Skills program. So I would encourage everyone to definitely, understand what all NASSCOM is doing in these areas. And, appreciate the fact that there is an industry body actually creating all of these programs for existing employees and potentially for people who want to join this industry.
And
In fact, Sujit, just to share some data points, we actually did a research very recently. And by the way, for the students, the research is all available free on NASSCOM website. We did a research on why, what are the services and large BPMs looking at when they hire, and when do they reject candidates? What are the key reasons for rejecting candidates? So it was very interesting that, everyone already called out what they're looking for. They're looking for strong foundation in maths, science, and technology. And that's one reason when you go on to the NASSCOM Future Skills site, you'll find foundation courses, which are just building your foundation in AI, data analytics, robotics, etc. So these foundation courses, I would say, are a must do. It builds to your employability. And then they are looking for, as Rishad said, the biggest thing they're looking for is, can you learn new things? Do you have a trainable mindset? And if you do not have that, irrespective of how good your foundation is, you will not get the job. I mean, that's a showstopper.
How do
So
they
I
figure
think it's
that out?
very important.
How does one figure that out?
If you look at interviews today, and I'm sure these guys will be able to tell you much more, but I'll just tell you the interviews we do at NASSCOM, it's all case study based. Go solve this. And in order to solve it, you have to show how much if you don't know something, how quickly can you go and learn something? At least all my interviews are, here's a problem, go take an hour, come back with the solution. And based on that, I will decide if I want to hire you or not. But see, interview techniques are changing, right? And it was very interesting that one of the key reasons why these companies do not hire is, one, they don't get to see that whether that willingness to learn, that curiosity, which can absolutely be measured. I mean, one trick I'll share here, in all our interviews, we keep time for students or whoever to ask us questions. 9 out of 10 interviewers do not use that time.
I see.
If you can use the time, it shows how hungry you are. It shows how curious you are, right? And that's why we keep the time. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they don't use that time. They say, no, I don't have any questions, right? So there are ways, Sujit, to do this. And the second other thing where people lose the chance, they don't get selected, is communication. Because today, even if you're coding, you are expected to interact with customers. So if your communication is not good enough, that's another area where you lose out. So I would strongly urge, if you're a student, go look up that research and prepare yourself accordingly.
Yeah, we did a story on the Chennai Mathematical Institute today, and the director was saying that all these mathematics students tend to be introverts, and now we are introducing programs for presentation and communication skills and all that. Exactly what Keshav and all of you have been saying. Yeah. Shilpa?
And the next question is from Niharika Verma. Do you think first-time jobbers starting their careers with work-from-home roles are at a disadvantage compared to others who graduated a few years back? If this is indeed a shortcoming, how can we make up for it?
I can go with it.
Sure.
Okay, go on, Srikanth.
Yeah, I think it is. It is a shortcoming, unfortunately, because while everybody has invested in digital onboarding and making sure that you're sort of meeting a number of different people, understanding the culture, but the really good understanding of culture that you get by just walking the aisle and seeing, seeing whether somebody has a one way to find out the culture of an organization for me is looking at the parking spots, right? Who has parking spots, and is there a preferred parking spot for the big bosses or not? You can't figure out these kinds of things while being remote, right? And secondly is that there is in the technology industry in general, and certainly in the AI and other industries, right? What you see is an apprenticeship model of learning. You essentially, you come in, you really don't know how to solve. You have a theoretical understanding, conceptual understanding, but no practical application. You've not really solved problems before, especially the really practical client problems that we might be solving, right? You sit there and you're seeing somebody else solve that problem, or somebody else is coming and telling you, oh, you are doing this. No, I think this doesn't work, but because in these things, this is practically what it means. And by the way, this coefficient here should be more than 2, or you'll say something like that, right? Some little tip that you get while sitting there from your seniors, somebody who's been there. These are invaluable, because otherwise you could spend 3 days going on a wild goose chase, not figuring out what's going on. But if you're sitting next to somebody, she or he can tell you in a minute, and you can progress. So that kind of interactive learning and accelerated learning that happens in an apprenticeship type of role, like when you see other people doing things and when other people are seeing you do things and giving you, that is not there. It's hard. So it becomes like, it just becomes like another glorified virtual classroom where you have a problem, but you are alone trying to solve it. So there is that dimension of that, because of which I think people are hurting a little bit more than they should. I do feel that part of this is to create somehow, if people can find ways to connect offline and sort of sit. There's a team in Fractal, for example. This team is called Theremin. What they do is they do use data to invest in stock markets, right? They're building a lot of algorithms to find out patterns in data and invest in stock markets. What they have done, very interestingly, what they've done is a very small team. There's only 7 people in that team. What they've done is every day they start a Zoom meeting. All day they're in the Zoom meeting. Throughout the day, they're sitting with each other. And it becomes like a virtual setup where they can literally talk to each other while things are going on. So this is one trick that they have set up so that this kind of apprenticeship learning is happening. But I think there may be some techniques like that we have to find out so that people can actually get to learn and accelerate their learning. Otherwise, I think working from office for a few days, those are some other solutions that are there. I don't think I have a better solution than that.
Okay, there's some questions coming in. There's an interesting one for Debjani here from Shailendra Muraka. What is NASSCOM's view on gig roles, and what steps would be taken for the social security of these employees? Yeah, that's a
very, very, very good question, and something that we ourselves are thinking through and working on. I think gig roles or the gig economy is the future. We are definitely going, we've seen acceleration already in COVID. And as talent gets more and more, a good talent gets more and more scarce, and with hybrid models becoming more and more the norm, I think we're going to see a lot of employees who will say that I don't want this, 9 to 5, whatever kind of a job in one company, but I'm going to focus, I'm going to build my expertise in this area, and I'm going to work across. So I think we will see gig roles, especially I feel we will see a lot of that come up in women, and we'll see a lot of that come up in deep tech. But we definitely need to figure out changes in our labor laws in order to make the gig economy sustainable in India. There is a lot more work that has to be done. We have already started having those discussions with the government. We are talking to Labor Ministry, we are talking to IT Ministry, Finance, etc., to start thinking through how do we bring about some of these changes in labor, taxation, etc., so that we can build a sustainable gig model. We have to do it, because if
what
we
are the
don't
big
do
issues
it,
there, Johnny? One or two of the big ones, changes that are required in terms of law?
there are a whole lot of issues that we are looking through, and I unfortunately I won't be able to give you right now the top 3, because the policy teams that's working on that will have the details. I can get back to you on that. But there are a whole lot of issues, from as simple as what happens if the person falls sick, who's responsible, injuries at home while working, who's responsible. I mean, there are many things, and it's sort of a mix of remote work and gig economy that comes through. But it's a very good question. I don't think we have answers today, but we are definitely, we've already raised these issues very strongly, because for the future of our industry, we need to get these things sorted.
Okay.
Sujit, we own a crowdsourcing platform, and it's been a great learning for me personally over the last 12 months, because the other side of the coin that Debjani is talking about is the absorbability of gig talent by customers, and the comfort that customers have to actually use gig talent, which is also a challenge in itself, right? Because customers don't want somebody who's faceless and comes in for some of the time and works for others and perhaps competitors, etc., etc. And I think one of the things that COVID has done to help is it has made people very comfortable with this dispersed model. So your talent can be sitting anywhere. Many of us today, while we work out of 10, 12 locations in India, probably have employees sitting out of 600, 700 different locations in the country today and working on scale and working impactfully. So the comfort with dispersed talent base is becoming a reality, unlike what it was 12 months ago, and would have probably taken longer for people to get comfortable with. So I find the openness of customers today to be comfortable with dispersed talent, to be comfortable with talent that comes in part-time, because they're also realizing they may need certain kinds of talent for some of the time and not all of the time. And this provides them the flexibility and the fungibility, which is equally powerful and leverageable and valuable from their vantage point. So I am very, very, very excited about this sort of crowdsourced way, gig way of working for the future. And I really think more and more of talent base will move that way, and you will have to leverage it smartly and impactfully as an organization, as well as a customer, as we move forward.
You're saying big IT services companies will use this model significantly?
I think we'll have to get comfortable with this model more and more.
Okay.
Right? We're seeing it. For example, we celebrated people from the company who were actually on this crowdsourcing platform, as opposed to scold them, so to speak, because they were really thinking futuristically. And I think that is the way things are going to move.
Okay. Shilpa, any questions?
Yeah, this question is from Paresh Bafna, and this is to Srikanth. Could you please talk a little bit more about pie-shaped learning? What combination could give us the edge?
Yeah, great question. So, for example, if you're in the world of AI, right? I mean, I'll talk about a few careers in the AI field. So the breadth could be around a few domains, right? You may have a superficial understanding of how financial services works, or insurance industry works, or consumer goods industry works, or healthcare industry works. So you may have some breadth in handling business problems, right? That really is helpful in any AI role, because eventually you're solving some interesting business problem. The pie, the two legs of that, which is depth. You may have depth in, let's say, deep machine learning techniques. It could be one area. You may be a deep learning expert, understanding, solving, let's say, image processing techniques, or conversational AI, or something like that. And the other pie could be just solid data engineering understanding. Like, how do we really take data and work on the cloud? So you may have a deep cloud engineering or data engineering expertise. If you have that profile today, you're actually a unicorn, because in that pie, if whoever has that, they're worth a really lot of money, because everybody wants them. These are called AI engineers. Right? These people they have AI knowledge, which is machine learning knowledge, and they have engineering knowledge or data engineering knowledge. And by the way, they can span across a few problem statements. I mean, that's magic, right? But this is one kind of a pie, which are very, very rare to get. But you can have other kinds of pies. You can have deep depth, let's say in an area like risk, like you are building great risk model, you're a deep risk expert, and you have enough data science expertise to build great risk models. And then let's say the breadth is that you're very good at client communication, managing client relationships, etc. So that's another way in which you can construct your pie. So there are multiple ways to create the pie, and you have to essentially know what are you good at. I have this thing called pleasure, meaning, and strength. To find your sweet spot, you have to see what is giving you pleasure. It has to be fun, because you're going to be in a 50-year career. Might as well have fun, right? So fun. Second is meaning, that it's something that you feel like you're solving an important problem. You can see why you're doing what you're doing. And strength, meaning it is an area that is not coming to you with great difficulty. It is somewhat natural to you, and you sort of lose track of time when you're working on it. So when you find those kinds of problems, And that is where you zero in on how to build that pie that you must build for yourself. Everybody has their own pie, but you have to build your own pie.
Okay. Yeah, almost at 7 o'clock, exactly 7 o'clock. And some of you may have hard stops. But Debjani, one last question to you. I mean, you talked about talent, innovation, of course, and trust. Trust is something else that you have a major as pillar. I don't fully understand that. What exactly do you mean?
So, I mean, when the crisis struck, a lot of clients were rethinking their collaborations or their partnerships. And I'll give you examples. If I was going to give you a contract for my business or to keep my business running, did I trust you enough to believe that you would be able to do it and you would be able to keep my business running despite the pandemic, despite repeated lockdowns, despite employees? Would you be investing in keeping your employees well? Would you be investing in the right remote working models? Would you be investing in cybersecurity to ensure that my business and my data does not get compromised? Trust became the key criteria for taking such decisions. As employees are coming back to work, I think one of the key things driving that decision is, do I trust my employers enough to look after me? Do I trust them to do the right things when I go back to work? Have the right social distancing norms and practices, et cetera, in place. Companies looking at investment opportunities today are looking at how much do they trust that country to do the right thing, to handle this kind of a crisis, because everyone knows there is going to be another one coming soon in some format or the other. So how ready are we to handle? How did India do this time? Thankfully, we did very well. Touch of all fingers crossed. I don't want to jinx it, but so far we have done fabulously, and we have definitely earned the world's respect. Uh, do they trust you enough to invest in the right components that will pay off, like talent? Are you investing in talent? Are you investing in ease of doing business? So this is why in today's world, I strongly believe, and the more conversations I have, whether it's with Rishad or Keshav or Srikanth or any of these CEOs, as well as a lot of end customers and what are they thinking, at the end of everything is trust. That's where the decision gets made, and I honestly believe that it's going to be one of the most important things in this new era.
Okay, I think we are out of time. Yeah, as Keshav also said, trust. Everybody's, I mean, we really built trust actually during the pandemic. Thanks so much. One of the best things happening right now for the country, I think, with the technology industry. I think great going. All the best to all of you. Thanks so much for being on this platform. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Sujit. Thank
Bye.
you, Sujit.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Keshav, Rishad, Srikanth.
Hi, Rishad. Thank you. Thank you, Rishad. Debjani.
Thanks, Shilpa.
Keshav.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.